Hello everyone, this is HyperVoiceActing, or Steve, whichever you prefer, and joining me for this video is...
I'm Andrew, TheMajinV.
And we are doing well, first off, we're doing a reattempt of a commentary on Prototype, the origin of Protoman. The reason I say a reattempt is because we tried doing this before, but unfortunately I didn't specify to Andrew that he needed to record his side of the commentary alongside mine, and, well, basically, he didn't have his stuff set up, so we're deciding to give this another go.
Yeah, I done goofed.
Yeah. We all done goof. But anyway, like I said, this is a dub of the two-parter comic arc of the Mega Man Archie comics known as Prototype. It details the origin of Protoman, voiced by Andrew here. And speaking of Andrew, not only did he help voice Blues, he also helped me with the video editing for this, whereas I did all of the audio mixing, as well as providing the voices for some of the characters, like Dr. Wily, who I also voiced in my own Sonic Mega Man comic dub, which, yes, I'm still working on that. People, please stop asking when the next episode will come out.
Yeah, like Steven said, I did the audio work, the video work for this, did a lot of the paneling and putting it all together. If I recall correctly, I had kind of a lengthy night putting the video itself together because I was working all day, and then I got home, and I had to get up early the next morning to go to a wedding in Calgary, so this is amidst me packing and getting ready for a trip on top of finishing this up, so it was quite a long night, I recall.
Dr. Light?
But the product was worth it.
Yeah, it was good. And considering the short time span you had to work on this, actually, the video portion of it came out really well. And just to speak to the audio portion of it, I think unless I make a new dub that surpasses it, I still stand by the opinion that this is probably some of the best audio mixing that I've done for a video yet.
Yeah, it's really well done. It's shown a lot of improvement from your earlier works too.
He was my first triumph.
And for those of you that have seen the video, aside from Mega Man here, who is voiced by Ronnie J. Koopa, most of the voice actors in this are reprised from... most of the characters do have the same voice actors from the Sonic Mega Man dub I've been working on. Obviously, Andrew here's still Blues. Fairfield Fencer here is, again, Dr. Light, and I myself am, again, Dr. Wily, doing for those of you that read this, you probably know that this is probably a different take on Wily than what they use in the dub. And as far as from an acting standpoint, this is kind of an interesting experiment for me, because whenever I voice a character like Wily, I kind of, when I have to do it in this particular light, I kind of have to fight against the gut instinct of doing the voice that you would expect him to do, and to kind of only emphasize like certain parts of that original personality and try to work with these newer aspects. Like, at this point in time, he still has a little bit of jealousy towards Dr. Light, but this is before he really became the evil, egomaniacal character that we all know and sort of love.
Yeah, it's more of a standpoint of they're scientific rivals, not bitter enemies. So it's just they're colleagues who are competing against one another, but they work together, but they still acknowledge that they need to be able to show their own strengths when they get the chance to.
And that's not limited to just me. This is also kind of a similar thing with Andrew here as well, because for those of you that don't know, Andrew here also does his own Mega Man dubs. In those, he voices both Blues, Dr. Light, and a few Robot Masters. And for those that have seen those dubs, you know that, considering that he's voicing Blues at a different point in time, he plays them a lot differently than he does in this dub.
Yeah, it's a much softer take to it, where Breakman is just all...
Don't worry about that now.
It's because Breakman sees himself in that light as a completely different character. To him, Blues is dead, he's no more. So you get, with Breakman, a much more cold, deadpan, like just an emotionally detached individual, and there's a lot of anger, regret, just... a lot of just raw emotion, where with Blues it's a lot softer, it's more dialed back, and... his emotional ties just seem more genuine. They're a little more kid-like, and I guess in the case, he still has a lot of innocence to him, much like how you saw with Rock in the early portions of the series.
I pushed too much of the world
with the earlier comics, and
but he seemed to be
yeah, and like I said,
well.
just going to the actors real quick, like I said, this is, in my opinion, probably some of the best stuff that as far as Protoman or blues goes, I think this is probably some of the best blues performance that you've done, not just in my videos per se, but also in pretty much any blues related thing you've done. Like, I'm really proud of the way this performance of yours came out.
Yeah, I was really happy with how it came out. Assuming like 46, which I just did for my own channel, that I really enjoyed how that came out as well. But again, it's not as, I guess in the sense like it doesn't get to show off as much with this character as I'd like to, because it's just a lot of like anger and rage and just intensity to it. You see one side of it, where this interpretation blues, you get to see a lot more.
Pretty much before the events that pretty much push him away from light and turning him into the character we all know him as. And speaking of light, just, again, for those that have seen Andrew's videos, you'll know that Andrew himself also voices Dr. Light in his videos, and not to diss on the way he voices Dr. Light, I think, for his videos, I think he does a good job. But the reason that I kind of like to keep Fair around in my videos as Dr. Light is that there's just something about the way he delivers his lines that, to me, kind of fit Dr. Light a bit more. Like, particularly in terms of the way he appears, like, that voice kind of seems to fit more of Dr. Light's design than the voice that Andrew does. But again, not to say that Andrew's performance is bad by any means. Like, you can definitely tell, especially in his last couple of videos, he really does a great handle on the distraught that Dr. Light had over potentially losing everything that from Dr. Wily's big attack. But in terms of the voice itself, it's, in my opinion at least, a bit too young for how I imagine a character like Light sounding.
Yeah, like, Dr. Light, I would put him around, like, maybe 50, 55 years old. I think my interpretation of Dr. Light, this is before, like, I took voice acting lessons with Rachel Messer, where she showed me just techniques I can use to actually help differentiate age ranges for when I do characters, so I have better approaches to that than I used to. But, like, looking at those old versions of Dr. Light, he doesn't sound quite as old. He sounds like he's maybe in, like, his late 30s, early 40s, rather than his 50s, which, it can be subtle, but it's a case of, like, you have to really talk from, like, the bottom of your chest to really start. The more you want to add age to a character, at least as a male, you have to, like, just talk from lower in your chest and from your diaphragm, and it just helps. I have to really practice on diction as well. That was a couple big things I took away from that lesson.
Yeah, diction and the use of the diaphragm are very important for characters like this. Speaking of characters, I feel I should say, all the main characters that are in this story, like I said, they're the same actors from the Sonic Mega Man dubs that I've made. Some of the side characters, though, like those army men, they were kind of like 11th hour castings, because I was having the hardest time trying to find people to voice those. So I just approached, like, various other people that I know, like, some of them are artists, some of them are Let's Players, to do these, like, bit roles, essentially, and thankfully they were more than happy to partake in this.
Right. And it was well done for the most part. It was, I guess, just considering, like, it was 11th hour too, it's, it turned out really well.
You brought that upon yourself.
And I really like how this scene was too, especially with some of the audio design.
Yeah, particularly with the bit that beforehand where it sounded like the voices were muffled because they were in the other room. That's what I wanted to do, but I had a bit of trouble figuring that out. Fortunately, Fair, just as a reminder, the voice actor for Dr. Light in this, he gave me a few tips on Audacity to figure out how I can make that type of sound look in this. And so just a big shout out to him for helping me figure that out.
Yeah, I know I went to Fairfield myself with some audio questions, and he really knows a lot of good little techniques and things that I wouldn't have thought of, but it's just some more intricate steps that you can take, and just what properties and effects to use, just to say Audacity, but it could be with any sort of audio software.
Please.
Yeah, essentially. And just going into audio real quick, I also need to make another good shout out to Tyler Sampsonis, or again, I apologize if I mispronounced his name. He's the one that helped me pick out some of the music choices in this. Like, for example, the track that plays right here during this Big Misunderstanding theme. Tyler helped me pick out the track for that and a few other choice scenes. And I'm really grateful for that, because I think he has, well, also, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I don't have too many soundtracks on my computer. It's also, I think he has a better idea of figuring out what type of tracks would really help these kind of scenes better than I do.
Yeah, he's very well versed in music choices. I know I kind of had the same things when I was starting out on my own projects, just not branching out enough, but I think now, especially when I do projects, just thoughts and input from Tyler have kind of showed me to try to find like music out of my comfort range. Like, I have some go-to albums and soundtracks, but at least now with everything I do, I try to incorporate like a new soundtrack at least in every issue. Like, again with 46, for the Dr. White roll auto sequence, and then the second Wily sequence while they're watching Breakman and Mega Man fight each other, I actually took a couple pieces from Fallout 4 and incorporated those into that piece.
I never heard of or saw him again.
Basically, what I do is, for the Sonic Mega Man dub at least, I stick with a lot of tracks from both Sonic and Mega Man, whichever ones I see fit. But I usually do like try to pick out tracks not from those games that I think would seem fitting. Like, most of the time, it's usually if I just download a new soundtrack, I'll try to dig through it and put it in there. That's kind of what I did for Episode 6, I believe. I just recently downloaded the soundtrack for the first Ratchet & Clank, and I was able to find a suitable piece for one particular fight scene I think it was with Charming Man or whatever, but I kind of have that same kind of bit of trying to get out of my particular comfort zone when it comes to music choices, and thankfully Tyler was, again, a big help with that.
Yeah. This is a really nice scene, too. I really love doing this speech. This is probably one of my favorite outcomes of this. It's just such a fun... This is just a fun bit of dialogue to do for Blues.
Good bit of monologuing. Yeah, you should probably keep that in mind, folks. If we can't really think of anything important to say on the scene, we'll probably just resort to gushing about Andrew's performance.
Oh, stop.
Okay. But anyway, like I was saying, but in all due seriousness about this performance, like we said, it is a really good opportunity to really show a side of Proto-Man that not a whole lot of people really get to see, because, even the comics, as good as they are, they only just recently started to show, like, little shades of gray in his personality, because for a good majority of the series, he's mainly just been Breakman.
Yeah, and, like, not including the Worlds Collide, like, the crossovers, even in that, like, his actual time as Protoman is very limited in this. Like, we really don't see it until issue 54, like, right at the end of the series.
When he finally does don the mantle of Protoman, that's one of the last issues that they made before the hiatus that they're going on, which I don't believe is affecting every Archie book. Like, I think the two Sonic comics are still ongoing, but Mega Man, I know for certain, is one of the comics that are on a hiatus during that time.
Yeah, and from what I could tell, at least as much as I could figure out just by kind of researching or delving through, like, various communities for the comics and stuff, it seems to have come from financial issues within Archie, specifically from they had launched a big Kickstarter to try to help fund their new Archie series. Like, they did more of a kind of a realistic feeling Archie series, which I have read the first issue of it. It is really good. Like, it's a very different feeling Archie series. But I think they assumed that they were going to get all their funding from this Kickstarter, and they didn't, and they're like, oh, we have to take money from other things, so Mega Man, you're going on hiatus, Betty and Veronica, or whatever, you're going on hiatus, everything gets a hiatus.
Except for, like I said, as far as I know, the Sonic comics aren't part of the hiatus, well, except for Boom, it's kind of on a permanent hiatus.
Yeah, Boom just kind of ended. I think that was more attributed to poor sales.
Yeah, most likely.
Like, I just don't think there's a reason for it to exist. In my eyes, anyway.
That's fair. I'm kind of in a similar mindset as well. Even though this scene this scene that we just talked over, this scene between Light and Wily is kind of tied with the ending as one of my favorite scenes in the stub, in terms of mixing and in terms of the voice acting. I just wanted to get that out there since we didn't really have a chance to really talk about it too much.
Yeah, it's a really good scene. It really shows off the strengths of you and Fairfield as Light and Wily, and it gives you just a different... view of their relationship, where you only ever see them as, like, bitter rivals. There's a lot of tension between them. In this, there's a real show of friendship there, and it's interesting to see, like, some of the things that got lost when we got to the games themselves, when Wily renounced being friends with him and all that, and went being hellbent on world domination.
Mm-hmm. And this is really the issue, if I'm not mistaken, that really started, because I know, like, a lot of issues afterwards really do kind of, like, not to the degree that this does, but there are, like, a few moments in the later comics that do kind of, like, play with that as well, mainly in the form of, like, flashbacks, like in Mega Man number, I want to say it was 53, where they kind of had, like, a flashback where Dr. Light was just starting off Light Labs, and at that point in time, Wily was kind of down on his luck, and Light is still, you know, trying to be a good friend, wanting to help him get up on his feet and try to make a name for himself as well. Moments like that they really started to, like, flesh out the relationship between Wily and Light outside of just being, like, former friends, now rivals.
Yeah. They show him in slightly different designs, I know, as well, because Dr. Light was still kind of pudgy. They just gave him a little bow tie, and they gave Wily a comb-over, which I thought was kind of funny. They gave him the ponytail thing, but he just had, like, a really bad comb-over, and he was all scraggly.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to this.
And,
I've heard them call me a hero.
Yeah. And, yeah, like I said, another instance of monologuing, like, that is one thing, like, a majority of Blues dialogue in this is monologues, but again, I think that's kind of one of the stronger aspects of your Blues performance. Like, you really have a good sense of knowing, like, the right amount of moments to emphasize, like, certain moods or certain words or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's days away.
Like here, it's
Hours.
he's talking about how he has so much less time, and it's running out more and more, and he's slowly accepting the fact that he is going to die, but you still hear, like, a scared kid inside. He's like, I don't want to die, but there's nothing I can do to stop it.
Mm-hmm. But however, there is someone that can help him with this, and it kind of leads into, we kind of talked about it earlier, but for those of you that either read the story or watched the video, you'll know that the reason why Blues was pushed away to begin with was because of, like, a misunderstanding. Like, he kind of misheard a conversation between Dr. Light and Dr. Lilinde, and then they're gonna have another misunderstanding right here when he looks through the window and sees Dr. Light with his kids, which is actually a panel taken straight from issue 8, I believe. In fact, I think they actually mention it in one of the editor notes here. But it's one of those things where it's like, I get that for the sake of the story, it works, but it's just one of those kind of tropes that you can't help but kind of, like, again, not to say it doesn't have a purpose, but it's one of those tropes that you kind of feel like you wish writers would kind of evolve past.
Yeah, like, you can always make it work, but it feels like it's just something people won't escape from anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not to say that the way that Aim Flynn executes it here is bad by any means. It's just an instance of, it'd be nice if there was, like, maybe a more creative, more unique method of figuring out how to push Blues away from Light. But like I said, in the context of the story, it does its job well enough.
Yeah, and that second misunderstanding especially, like, when Blues was at his most vulnerable and he was running home excited to see Dr. Light again, he sees that, he just... It felt like it hit him even harder.
Mm-hmm. And now, like I mentioned earlier, tied with the scene between Wily and Light, this is probably one of my favorite scenes of the dub, and it's really a variety of reasons. One is, well, obviously, a lot of it has to do with Andrew's acting here, and I think it's also probably, in my opinion, I did probably the best mixing in this, and again, going back to Tyler, a lot of it does have to do with the track that he picked for this scene. Like, I think the track that he picked really just helped convey, like, the emotion and just overall drive of the scene.
I'm guessing a few tears rolled during this scene for some.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember seeing that in the comment section. Just real quick, that whistle that Blues did right there, In the takes that Andrew sent me for this, he did try to do the whistle a second time, but for some reason he couldn't quite get it the way he wanted it to, so what I did instead is I took the whistle he did from the first try and just slowed it down a bit.
Yeah, I think it just might have been a case of finishing a long recording session with that, because I know I've done that sort of thing before. I was trying to whistle like a longer portion of that opening medley, but it just... the whistling just did not want to cooperate that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember, like, you were trying, like, various different things. Like, at one point, you actually just kind of harmonized and hummed the theme instead, which were fine, but I kind of felt like the whistling would probably have been better, so I just went back and took that take and just did it slower. Again, not that I don't appreciate you trying, it's just something I felt like needed to be done.
Yeah, it was just something I figured I'd try anyway. It's like, you never know. Someone might like this, so it's nice to have it if it gets used.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, that is Prototype, the origin of Protoman. Hopefully you all enjoyed this commentary, and if you like this commentary, I'll try to see if I can do more of these in the future, whether it be by myself or whether it be with other people that are involved in the videos. Thank you again, Andrew, for partaking in this.
No problem.
And I will leave a link to his YouTube account in the video description at the bottom. For those of you that are curious to see, like, his dubs and whatnot, I would recommend it. He actually has quite a few good dubs. But, until next time, thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a grand day.
See you later.